Welcome back to Multipolar World, the channel where we peel back the complex layers of geopolitics and decode the underlying currents reshaping our global order. My friends, a seismic geopolitical shift just occurred in the Middle East, yet the vast majority of the world completely missed it. There were no exploding bombs, no blaring red headlines, and absolutely no declarations of war. This transformation was quieter, far more subtle, and perhaps exponentially more dangerous to the old world order. It was a realignment so carefully calculated that by the time the international community noticed, the game was already over. The Gulf Cooperation Council, the ironclad alliance that was supposed to bind Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Oman into an unbreakable bloc, is cracking and crumbling from the inside. And the man swinging the sledgehammer, ironically enough, is the very person everyone assumed was the GCC's ultimate defender. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, widely known as MBS. Today, we are going to look at the big picture of how this young crown prince outmaneuvered everyone, single-handedly constructing a brand new regional empire without needing the permission or the partnership of his old ally, Abu Dhabi. Let's dive into this strategic breakdown in 5 parts. To truly grasp the magnitude of this geopolitical chessboard, we have to rewind to 1981, the year the Gulf Cooperation Council was born. The world back then was a suffocating, volatile place. Iran had just undergone its earth-shattering Islamic revolution, while the Soviet Union loomed as a massive specter of instability. 6 Gulf nations, sitting atop oceans of black gold, felt incredibly vulnerable to outside forces circling them like vultures. They decided to sit down and sign a charter with a singular belief: we are stronger together. The goal was collective security, economic integration, and political coordination. Essentially the Gulf's version of the European Union, heavily lubricated by massive oil revenues. For decades, the GCC functioned reasonably well. There were squabbles and quiet rivalries, but the structural framework held. That is, until 2017, when all illusions of an alliance of equals were violently torn apart. The comprehensive blockade against Qatar, spearheaded by Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Egypt, pulled the curtain down. This was not just about closing airspace or borders. It was a ruthless attempt to force Qatar to surrender its foreign policy sovereignty. This crisis exposed a truth everyone knew but no one dared to say out loud. The GCC was not a brotherhood of equals. It was a theater production, and behind the stage, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates were the actual directors. They moved as one, made decisions together, and the rest of the bloc either fell in line or faced the wrath. Yet, right at the zenith of this dual power dynamic, the seeds of fracture began to sprout. Western intelligence and geopolitical analysts made a fatal miscalculation. They assumed Saudi Arabia and the UAE were permanently fused at the hip. Saudi Arabia's MBS and the UAE's President Mohammed bin Zayed, often known as MBZ, were lauded as a tag team, young, aggressive, modernizing autocrats playing by the exact same rules. But that assumption aged terribly. MBS, fueled by immense ambition and sitting on the world's largest oil reserves, slowly realized a profound truth. He did not need Abu Dhabi the way the world thought he did. The divergence did not start with a shouting match. It bled out from the battlefields of Yemen. In 2015, when Saudi Arabia launched a military campaign to push back the Iran-backed Houthis, the UAE jumped in as its most capable partner. But as the war dragged on, their objectives violently clashed. Riyadh wanted to restore the internationally recognized government, while Abu Dhabi quietly funded southern separatist groups to secure control over crucial ports and maritime choke points. By 2019, UAE-backed forces and Saudi-backed military units were literally shooting at each other in the streets of Aden, an alliance firing on itself. The UAE then quietly withdrew, leaving MBS to shoulder a geopolitical embarrassment and a humanitarian catastrophe. MBS took notes, and he remembered. Then came 2020 and the Abraham Accords. The UAE pulled off a world-shaking move by normalizing relations with Israel. Suddenly, Abu Dhabi became the darling of Washington, Tel Aviv's golden partner, and the ultimate symbol of pragmatic Arab modernity. Saudi Arabia, the older brother with the bigger economy and more oil, was pushed into the shadows, watching its protege steal the spotlight. That was the exact moment MBS decided to change the rules of engagement. He would no longer let Abu Dhabi dictate the terms of regional diplomacy. He was going to build his own lane. In March 2023, MBS threw a bucket of ice water on the West and the UAE by shaking hands with his sworn arch-nemesis, Iran. Even more shockingly, the architect of this historic normalization was not the United States, and it certainly was not the UAE. It was China. MBS was loudly broadcasting to the world, "I can manage my own regional security without following the UAE's lead." Abu Dhabi was completely locked out of the room. Simultaneously, MBS quietly rebuilt the entire Gulf network. First was Qatar. From being blockaded enemies for 3.5 years, Riyadh and Doha transitioned into a surprisingly highly functional working relationship. Why did MBS reach out? Because Qatar controls assets the UAE cannot. Al Jazeera's global media dominance, massive natural gas flows to Europe, and deep ties to political Islam movements. It is not a brotherhood. It is a ruthlessly pragmatic calculation. Next was Oman, the historically neutral, quiet outlier. MBS did not see Oman as a hurdle. He turned it into a crucial buffer and a backdoor diplomatic channel. Massive Saudi investments are pouring into Omani infrastructure, creating economic corridors entirely out of Abu Dhabi's reach. But the most dramatic pivot is Turkey. The relationship, once frozen in hatred following the brutal assassination of journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018, has seen a spectacular reversal. MBS and Turkish President Erdogan, both incredibly transactional leaders, shook hands. In exchange for Saudi cash and investments, MBS gains a NATO-linked military heavyweight as a partner. It is the perfect counterweight, allowing Saudi Arabia to project power without relying on the United States or the UAE's security apparatus. Here on Multipolar World, we frequently discuss the decline of the petrodollar system, and MBS is the man currently dismantling it, brick by brick, through a landmark relationship with China. Saudi Arabia is not just selling oil to Beijing. They are allowing Huawei to build core digital infrastructure despite fierce United States threats. And most importantly, they have begun conducting oil transactions in Chinese yuan. When President Xi Jinping visited Riyadh in December 2022, it was not a standard diplomatic tour. It was a spectacular flex of power, a clear signal that the Gulf's center of gravity was pivoting east. Yes, the UAE is also close with China, but MBS has something Abu Dhabi can never replicate: scale. Saudi Arabia's immense oil reserves, its dominance in OPEC+, its sheer landmass, and its religious authority over the Islamic world give Riyadh a gravitational pull in Beijing that UAE investment portfolios simply cannot match. Beyond diplomacy, an all-out economic war is brewing between Riyadh and Dubai. MBS's $500 billion science fiction megacity, NEOM, is not just an architectural pipe dream. It is a geopolitical declaration of war. MBS wants to make Saudi Arabia the undisputed commercial hub of the world, actively pressuring thousands of multinational corporations to relocate their regional headquarters from Dubai to Riyadh, under the threat of losing lucrative Saudi government contracts. This friction bleeds into everything. Within OPEC+, the UAE wants to pump more oil immediately to maximize profits before the green energy transition, while Saudi Arabia insists on production cuts to maintain high prices, leading to explosive clashes. More terrifyingly, in the devastating civil war currently tearing Sudan apart, Saudi Arabia, backing the state military, and the UAE, funding the rapid support forces, are actively proxy warring against each other. This is not the behavior of an alliance. This is a clash of regional hegemons pursuing entirely independent agendas. The new order MBS is constructing puts the United States in an incredibly uncomfortable position. Washington spent decades managing the Middle East through the Riyadh-Abu Dhabi axis. The Biden administration initially tried to ice MBS out, releasing the Khashoggi intelligence report and freezing weapon sales. But that awkward 2022 fist bump in Riyadh proved the absolute impotence of the superpower. MBS demonstrated that he will decide oil prices, make peace with Iran, and sign strategic pacts with China without ever asking the White House for permission. The era of Saudi Arabia acting as an obedient American client state is permanently over. In this emerging multipolar world, Saudi Arabia has positioned itself as an independent, rising great power, expertly balancing on a tightrope between Washington, Beijing, and Moscow without pledging exclusive loyalty to any of them. So what happens to the GCC? The GCC is a relic of Cold War thinking. Its institutional shell will survive. The glamorous summits will still happen, the photo opportunities will take place, and empty joint statements will be published. But the actual strategic coordination and collective decision-making evaporated a long time ago. In its place, a Saudi-centric order has formed. This is not the Saudi Arabia of King Fahd, which outsourced its security to America. This is Mohammed bin Salman's Saudi Arabia, aggressive, highly confident, transactional, willing to make new enemies, and perfectly happy to embrace old ones. Naturally, this new architecture has its Achilles heel. MBS's alliances are deeply personal and pragmatic, meaning they could evaporate if interests shift or if his grand Vision 2030 fails to deliver economically. But the trajectory is undeniable. The man who was boycotted by the world, labeled a reckless prince playing geopolitical games. That very man quietly and patiently rebuilt the entire Middle Eastern order right under the world's nose. If you want to understand the Middle East in the coming decade, do not read the GCC charter. Look at Mohammed bin Salman's phone contacts. See who is on that list, and notice who has been quietly, deliberately deleted. The balance of power did not shift with guns and tanks. It shifted in the quiet spaces between the headlines. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. What are your thoughts on the future of the Gulf and Saudi Arabia's bold moves in this multipolar world? Let us know in the comments below. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to Multipolar World so you never miss our next geopolitical breakdown. Until next time.